So it is a great honor for me to introduce our speaker today, who will address issues concerning prevention methods and self-help. Our speaker today got his educational training in California State University, his skills and expertise in the allied field of personality psychology, sports psychology, and positive psychology. His research interests include personality psychology, positive psychology, sports science, resilience, individual, self, and humanistic and existential psychology. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Alex. Mr. Alex, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you so much, Samira. All right, so good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for being here with us today. So quite a bit for me to share, actually, in regards to this very, very interesting, but also very, very relevant topic. So just give me a moment. Let me share my screen. Okay. All right, can you see my slide?
Yes, doctor, we can see it.
All right, thank you. All right, so interesting topic, and wanted to change the title a little bit. So how to be a vaping quitter, or basically how to be a quitter, which is actually a good thing. So I just want to clarify that. Okay, so let's talk about e-cigarettes, right? One of the key factors here. So basically, electronic cigarettes, also called e-cigarettes, for example, or electronic nicotine delivery systems, are nomenclature, right? So basically, it's a battery-powered tools with heating element, produces inhalable aerosol. So generally speaking, it's understood that this is something that is healthier than smoking cigarettes, as an example. So this successful marketability, or basically the e-cigarettes, basically is due to the perception that it would supplement, this is the key thing here, supplement tobacco harm reduction. There's already lots of conclusive proof about how smoking cigarettes, taking alcohol taking tobacco in various forms, for example, can lead to lots of issues, right? So that's been proven. So that's why having this thought that replacing it with e-cigarettes may be the way to go. So even to support that further, some public health advocates also argued that using electronic cigarettes or e-cigarettes actually would help adults quit. Now, that is a very, very strong perspective in regards to why people who are currently smoking should transition to e-cigarettes to help them reduce continuing to smoke. Very strong arguments, particularly from public health advocates. So how then do we fight against this point, when you have people who are in the know actually arguing this? Well, let's talk about and have a deeper understanding of the users first and foremost. We need to understand what are their long-term e-cigarette perceptions, because this is very, very key. In order to make any change at all, we need to understand what is the thought process of those who are currently using. We shouldn't make assumptions. We should always do research to have a deeper understanding. So this study was done in Malaysia and was published in 2020, but the results, the questionnaire that they gave out was actually done in 2018. So respondents were 694 e-cigarette users. That's quite a large sample. Respondents were predominantly Malay, aged more than 30 years, tertiary educated, employed, with monthly household income of 4,000 or less, 84% of former smokers. Okay, so that's just a breakdown of what information, who are the respondents. Now, this is where it gets very, very interesting, right? Why is vaping on the rise? Well, when you look at the current users, you can kind of make sense of things. Most users reported getting a definite nicotine hit from using electronic cigarettes, which means that it is a form of replacement, right? So you're changing one form of habit, or even you could argue an addiction, to another form, right? So about 3/4 actually feel a definite nicotine hit, which is very, very reinforcing that kind of behavior. Second point though, the majority perceive the use of electronic cigarettes or e-cigarettes to be as satisfying as tobacco, but not as high, 59%. But this is the key point I want to emphasize upon. They perceive using EC as healthier, 93.7%, healthier than smoking cigarettes. Now, keep this in mind in my few other slides as well. I want to re-emphasize this point. This key point is what keeps them continue to vape, okay? Because they perceive it as healthier. Okay, so I'll come back to this point again. In addition to that, most users believe that ECs have helped them to cut down on tobacco smoking. Again, 94.8% think so, as well as to reduce the urge to smoke at about 88%. That's huge. From a public health perspective, this is a success. Okay, I can't deny that. Switching from a proven carcinogen, right, which is smoking cigarettes, to something healthier and less harmful at such a high rate is a definite success. The problem, obviously, that I think we are also talking about is the addictive nature of e-cigarettes and vaping, in addition to the health issues, different set of health issues that can come about. Although it's not about smoking in terms of traditional smoking, right? Cigarettes, it's something else that does come about, particularly in terms of the chemicals that are involved. So it's kind of like jumping out of the fire into the frying pan. Sorry, jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. You know, it's like you're not really out of the problem yet. You're kind of like just shifting into something else. Now, having said that, most respondents believe that the use of ECs have helped them to stop smoking. That's great. At 87%, that's absolutely fantastic. But again, we are kind of switching from smoking cigarettes to vaping. So from one issue to another. So yes, we successfully, at a very high rate, stopped smoking, but we're switching to something else instead. Okay. Now, so let's talk about the odds, and then they calculated based on the model as well. So the odds of being long-term EC users was 2.4 times higher among former smokers. So this is the catch. If you're a former smoker and then you started vaping, the likelihood of you continuing vaping is 2.4 times higher because you used to smoke and it's helped you to reduce smoking or even stop smoking, but now you're vaping instead. Okay, the most significant predictor of long-term EC usage was the perception that ECs helped them to stop smoking. And by far and large, it did at about 87%. Very, very successful. Now, this was also followed by users aged over 30 years who had about twice higher odds of being long-term EC users. Why? Well, they're working, they're earning money, they're spending money on the vaping, how should I put it, the tools and all the, how should I put it, the paraphernalia involved. It costs money and they can afford it because they're working. Okay, so these are the how should I put this, the components that are leading to the likelihood of people switching from smoking cigarettes to vaping. But that doesn't, so on one hand, it's good that it's kind of lowers the incidence of smoking cigarettes, but now it's kind of switching over to vaping instead. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about in terms of behavior change. Let's talk about in terms of public health. Is there things that we could do? Because we're kind of like, we're dealing with one problem, but we're opening up another set of problems itself. So for those of you who may be aware or be familiar with this model, this is the Transtheoretical stages of change or change model, for example. This is the series of thought processes that a person goes through in regards to how ready they are to actually make a change and how to sustain that change. So let's talk about this. At the earlier stage, the first point is pre-contemplation. So this is where people need to build awareness for the need to change. They may not even be thinking about changing. It's like, I'm fine, you know, things are going great. So there's no need to change. So therefore, at this point, they need to build awareness, and talks like these, events like these can help to build awareness. So it's like, oh, you mean vaping is not so safe after all? As an example, right? So building awareness for the need to change. Then it reaches the point where they are reaching contemplation. Now they're actually thinking about changing. Okay, so increasing the pros for change and decreasing the cons. Right? Anything in life, when it comes to decision making, some things they are pro, they're things which are beneficial, like I'm not smoking anymore. That's great. What are the cons? Oh no, now I'm addicted to vaping, as an example. So you have to contemplate. And based on the contemplation, how much do you still want to change, if at all? Now, let's say the person now makes that change from contemplation, from thoughts to actual preparation, actually starting to make that change. So now You're committing to quitting, committing to make that change, coming up with an action plan. That's great. All right, but there's a lot of preparation that needs to go into that. After that, you put your plan into action. You implement it, and based on adjustments that you need to make, you can revise it over and over again in order to help yourself. And ultimately, if you're successful, then you reach maintenance. So then you integrate this change into your regular life, and then you can maintain that change moving forward. And that's great. That's the idea. However, again, this is the change model, stages of change model. But let me bring up another model, the health belief model, that comes into play here. Because ultimately, why would you want to change? You may want to change because of the health benefits. So when we look at the health perspective in regards to actual change, let's break down the components again. So let's start with the modifying factors first. So these are things you can't change, like age, gender, geographic location, education, ethnicity, and all that kind of stuff. These are things which are set into place. So let's leave that aside. But now let's look at the individual side of things, the individual belief system. So the first point, perceived susceptibility to actual disease. At a relatively young age, you're talking about teenagers, you're talking about young adults, you're talking about 30 plus. The likelihood of them actually suffering from the side effects of long-term vaping is relatively low. One of the things is that we don't really have a lot of hard data to actually show what are the actual effects. Not to mention the vast variety of how should I put this, the liquids that are used, right? The different kinds of chemicals that are used. Who knows what are the actual effects depending on the concentration, right? How often is actually smoked or vaped, but also what other chemicals and the combination of chemicals. There's just far too much variety right now to say something conclusive, but we do know there are negative side effects, but we can't show that for certain because the mixture, the combination is so vast, right? Unlike tobacco and in cigarettes as an example, which is quite very well researched because although there's many chemicals, it's more standardized. So in terms of perceived susceptibility to the disease itself, what disease? What's the issue? The users may not even think about that because it's like, hey, it's better than smoking, right? So in terms of perceived susceptibility, no problem there because what disease? There isn't any concrete proof on that. So if there is no perceived susceptibility to disease, then there is also no perceived severity of disease. I may have a cough here and there, maybe a little bit hard to breathe as an example. So what? No big deal, right? So it doesn't affect them significantly in their daily life. Now, let's look at the next component of things. Perceived benefits of preventive action. Now, this is, I would say, one of the major factors why vaping, once you start, it's going to be very, very hard to stop. When you look at the perceived benefits of preventative action, particularly if the users are former smokers, they will actually perceive vaping as the preventative action, as the better action to do compared to smoking, and therefore maintain and sustain and continue vaping. Keep in mind, again, the previous data. Most electronic cigarettes users think that it is a healthier alternative. It is also helping them to reduce the urge to smoke, as well as actually helping them to stop smoking. So in their mind, vaping is actually preventative action. It is actually helping them to stop smoking. And for them, that is exactly why they'll continue to do it. Now, how are we going to manage that? How are we going to change the perspective of those who switch from smoking to vaping and believe vaping is actually healthier and better and is actually a good thing in terms of their health belief and their health moving forward? It's a huge hurdle because they actually believe it's good. So now let's look at the next component here, perceived barriers to preventative action. There are lots because they really believe it works. And it's true for 87%, at least for those respondents, it actually cut down on the risk of smoking. And therefore, it's healthier. Okay? Now, having said that, let's add one more component in, perceived self-efficacy. This is a tough one because self-efficacy basically means your belief that you can actually make a change if you wanted to. Okay? Now, switching from smoking cigarettes to vaping is already deemed as a positive change. And that's already reinforcing. It's already helpful, and you can see the health benefits in terms of comparing it to smoking cigarettes. So having this thought that it is a positive action, that can also, how should I put it, reinforce the idea that they are doing something good. And this self-efficacy, this belief that they are doing something good to help themselves, continues and supports that belief. And therefore, when it comes to the action of the individual behaviors, it is extremely difficult once you start smoking and then vaping, or even start vaping, because let's say those who didn't start smoking first, they start vaping straight away. Their argument, at least I didn't smoke. It's healthier, you see? But the problem is, how do we convince people who believe that these behaviors are healthy or healthier and ask them to stop? Okay? So when it comes to the individual actions or individual behaviors, this is the only option that we have here. The cues to action, the cues to change, again, such as this webinar, such as information, proper, valid, evidence-based information. So things like media campaigns, physician reminders of friends or family members' illness, when they can actually see something negative actually happening to others that they know of, that they care about. And then it's like, wait a minute, it's not like in the ads. And I don't feel anything, but I see the effects, negative effects in people I know, people I trust. Maybe these things aren't so safe after all. That's when they can actually start to see it differently. But right now, they look at the perceived benefits as vaping as something beneficial. And that is hard to circumvent. Okay? So having this huge hill to climb and how to take over, convince them otherwise, this is tough. Because once any behavior that we make, we want to sustain it, and we can come up with all sorts of reasons. For all those listening right now, think of any behavior, an addiction, a habit that you wanted to change or quit, but you haven't. And it's something that's deep inside of you that you're not happy about yourself, but you keep doing it. And how many times have you tried to stop it, but you don't? All of us have this. Why is it so hard? Well, it's hard because we can convince ourselves that it's better, that it's healthier than an alternative. And so how do we talk to someone to actually help them quit vaping? All right, so let's start with a few key points here. So existing research, though, has actually linked chemicals in the e-cigarettes to lung and respiratory issues, changes in the brain, as well as organ damage. Again, keep in mind, someone who's vaping is inhaling aerosols in the hundreds of combinations of chemicals that weren't meant necessarily to be ingested. And they're doing this willingly. And the combination is so vast and varied, continuously as well. Of course, what they perceive is the nicotine high plus the particular flavor, which is what they tend to talk about. And it can be quite, how should I put this, deceiving when you have names like mango or fruity flavors that gives the impression in the brain that, hey, I know it's not a fruit, but it feels and smells and tastes like a fruit, so it's healthier. So the naming convention of things helps to send the perception that it's not so bad. But keep in mind, that's actually not mango. Those are chemicals that give off the impression that it smells and tastes like mango, but it's not. Not to mention the hundreds of other chemicals in there. All right. Okay. So coming back to this, okay, if for example, the health reasons aren't a big enough motivator to actually make a change, you might also want to ask yourself these questions. So Is vaping controlling your life? And it's very easy to check on this. If you don't have to, if you say it's not controlling your life, can you stop for a day? If you say you can't go a day without it, then it's controlling your life. Simple answer, simple question, okay? Also, you need to ask yourself, how does vaping affect your relationship with your friends and parents, boyfriend or girlfriend, or other people important to you? Do you have to find time away from them to vape? Does it affect your relationships? Maybe your boyfriend or girlfriend is not happy that you're vaping, but you're still doing it anyway. Is it worth risking that relationship to vape? Right? Just something to think about. Do you hide from your parents or other people around you that you are vaping? If you're actually doing these behaviors, then it's affecting your life negatively. In addition to that, are you spending a lot of money to keep vaping? I know the I don't know what you call that, okay, but the whole paraphernalia can really be expensive. And they're very, very fancy in vaping paraphernalia. Is that important to you? What's the image that you're trying to portray? But more importantly, what are you doing to yourself? If you're not worried about the chemicals, are you worried about the people around you and ultimately yourself? So you have to have that pre-contemplation going on first. Is it even in your mind? For those who are not intending to make a change, they're not going to make a change until something happens. And what happens? Something negative. Maybe they see a friend or family member or someone they know actually suffer some consequences from this. Maybe they read a story online. Maybe they attend a webinar such as this. And then they're like, wait a minute, maybe let me start thinking possibly about changing. But let me think about it first. So let's talk about the next step, how to actually move on to the next step to prepare. So it's very, very important though, to know why you're quitting, right? Because in any sense of the word, when we want to break a habit or even an addiction, we have to make a list of things, reasons. We have to reason things out. Why would we want to quit? And then we can put it in a place where we'll see it often. You know, one way is maybe you could put it in your bathroom mirror. You can put it on your fridge. You know, you can put it on your TV. You can put it by your laptop or your computer. This list is that every time you want to vape, it's like, oh, I see that list. And then you remind yourself that list is important to you. And that's why you wrote it. Okay. So you can put that list on your phone as well. So every time you pick up your phone, like, yep, it's a reminder. You can put it as your backdrop, for example. Okay. Now, when you have the urge to vape, look at the list to remind yourself why you want to stop vaping. And this list of things must come from you and you alone. It cannot come from anybody else. It must be from you. So ultimately, it's important to you, and that's why you are the one making that change. Now, to help you along, the good thing is that there are quite a lot of free apps available. Again, our phones are our friends, isn't it? We bring them everywhere. So other than the vaping equipment, we have our phones. So you can download apps like Quit Start. Now, just an example, there are quite many others as well that are available on the App Store as well, and Google Play as well. So this is a free smartphone app that helps you to quit smoking with tailored tips, inspiration, and challenges. Now, one good thing about apps such as these is that they have the support of evidence-based research and behavioral scientists, right? Anti-tobacco companies that come in to actually, and former smokers as an example, to come in to actually help tailor the strategies to behavioral strategies to actually help people reduce the usage of smoking and vaping as an example. So these are actual proven strategies that work. But again, the work comes from you. This is just an app to help guide and facilitate that change. But the change, you still need to make that change for yourself. All right. So for example, what does it involve? So the Quick Start app helps you to create your own quick kit with customized tips and materials. Okay, so the more you use it, the more personalized it can get for you so that it can fit the content to your needs, which is what you actually want ultimately. You can also check your progress. You can earn badges for smoke-free milestones and other achievements as well. It can get you back on track if you have a slip and you smoke. Once you make a mistake and you slip up, it's not the end of the world. The point about it is, I think many of us, when we want to change our behavior, it's like when we slip up, we think, oh, you know what? I give up because I can't stop this. And then I just give up. I go back to the behavior. But the fact of the matter is that from the point you make a decision to the point you slip up, there was a period of time where you actually did not participate in that particular behavior, which is a win compared to what you would normally do. So just get back on it again and to acknowledge that you and I and all of us are human, and making mistakes is part of the deal, but we're just trying to do it less. Okay. Then we can also mark times or places that you want to make, that you want to smoke, so that you get encouragement when you need it more. So you can learn a behavior of what are the triggers in your life, which places, what do you do that actually makes you want to vape, as an example. It can also help you to manage your cravings and bad moods in healthy ways and distract yourself from cravings with games and challenges as well. Again, this is just one app. There are many apps out there available to help you along. So they are free, they're evidence-based. Please give it a try. In addition to that, it's also very important to give yourself a date to quit. Too many of us, I think, set this goal like, I'll quit when I want to. I can quit since, I know I can. But actually doing it is a different matter. So setting an actual date, a clear date, gives yourself that commitment to actually turn this into an action. So keep in mind again, when you look at the stages of change, from contemplation, now we move to preparation. From preparation, ultimately we move to action. This is really tough. We can have good intentions to actually want to change things, but to put it into action and implement it, and then ultimately to sustain it, it is the biggest challenge. So I'm going to show you some tips as well, and hopefully that will help you to keep your change going. Okay. So give yourself a date to quit. Okay. One of the things, a few things to look at when you want to choose a date. Give yourself time to get ready. Don't say, I'm going to start now. I'm going to start tomorrow. Think about the consequences of what does it take to quit. Okay, you got to get stuff ready. You got to plan things. You got to feel confident, as an example. But don't put it off for too long as well. Don't pick something like, oh, I'll start next month somewhere, middle of the year. You know what, end of the year. Don't give yourself too long that way. Choose a date that is no more than a week or two away. Why? You want to strike while the iron is hot. Many times when we talk about wanting to change, we have this first from no point of changing to like, I think this is a good thing to change, or whatever it may be. But then if we don't do anything about it, then it goes back into pre-contemplation again, right? If nothing turns into action, it goes out of our mind and it never comes back in. So one of the ways to keep things going is once you become aware of, hey, I want to change this. I want to quit smoking. I want to quit vaping. Act on it. But in order to act on it, prepare first. What is actually involved? So choose a date that's no more than a week or two away. Set yourself up for success. Don't set a date when you know it will be stressful, like the day before a big test, right? One of the ways that a lot of vapers and smokers, what they do is they smoke or vape when it's stressful. So please don't set it on those dates, because you're going to set yourself up for failure. But also circle it on your calendar or set an alert on your phone. Make sure you have a plan. So how? What can you do? One of the, again, I'm going to show you some strategies later, but the idea is when you set a date, really think about what activities you're going to be doing around that date. So you have time to identify some alternative coping skills. What are your go-tos? Do you listen to music? Do you eat? Do you exercise? So what do you do? Do you talk to your friend? Do you seek support? Find some coping strategies available to you and kind of like get those things ready. So when you feel weak, you can go to those coping skills and those coping strategies. Tell your loved ones and enlist their support. Doing it alone is extremely tough. Not to mention that if you suddenly make a change and then suddenly you get moody or you feel very not yourself and people misunderstand you, like, what's wrong with you, right? That will make it even harder to keep it going. So tell the people who are important to you and enlist their support. Tell your loved ones. This is going to be tough. Having vaping products around, naturally your habit is to just reach out and take it. If you don't have that there, or you don't have it with you, or you get rid of it. Okay, I know some of you are going to be very afraid. You mean getting rid of it? Can I? If you get rid of it and you don't have it, you can't smoke. But are you ready for that? Okay, so before you do that, so you want to have an alternative behavior. So you can buy some gum, hard candies, or toothpicks to chew on, and other things you can use to help fight the urge to it. Because when you want to change any particular behavior, in order to make that change, we have to switch behaviors first, right? Because it has to do with the mouth, it has to do with the action. So having something else to put in the mouth, having something else to work with your fingers, for example, can help you resist the urge to vape because it is a replacement strategy. Okay. In addition to that, talk to a therapist or review online resources to see how you can actually enhance the successes for actually making it happen. And ideally, practice quitting by doing a test run. Give it a try. Once you have all these things in place, give it a test run. Okay, I know I set next week as the date to start, but I'm going to go right now. I'm going to try these strategies. I'm going to help myself so that I can feel and prepare, mentally prepare and physically prepare yourself for the challenges that are involved when it actually happens. Give it a test run first. We are better prepared when we know what we're up against, not to mention we're going to try certain strategies and see whether it actually works or not. Now, this is a big question here. Going cold turkey or gradually quitting, which is better? So some arguments say, just stop completely, just stop it, everything. That's better. Some say, no, no, no. Cut it down slowly, step by step by step. That's better. Well, when you do look at the research though, research suggests that actually going cold turkey or quitting vaping all at once may be the most effective way to quit for some people. Some people just need that just stop behavior, just cold turkey, just doing it rather than gradually cutting it down, gradually cutting down. Okay, now why do I say this? According to the results of 2016 study that looked at 697 cigarette smokers, those who quit cold turkey were more likely to be abstinent, that means not smoking at all, at a 4-week point than those who quit gradually. And the same held through the 8-week and 6-month follow-up. Once you make that firm decision to quit, it's going to be challenging, but it tends to sustain. Just quickly share a story about my own dad. Lifelong smoker. From a teenager, he was already smoking. And he was in his 40s, I think late 40s, when he saw a friend, a colleague, actually in hospital well, when he visited the friend, he was just taken aback. They were pumping out the tar from the lung. And beside his friend, you could see a jar, so to say, a container, where you could see the black tar coming out. Okay, basically his friend was also a heavy smoker, and that image of his friend, someone he knew, who he smoked with, but now he sees the effect. Just that day, he just quit. He just quit completely. Now, didn't mean that he didn't have any cravings. He did. Okay, he used hard candies, like chewing candy all the time, just to stop that craving. It took him a few months, but he eventually quit completely, even from the hard candy. And I mean, and he did quit on that day itself. But it took something so gruesome, something so vivid, that actually helped him to quit. But that's what it takes sometimes when just people we know that actually just, wait a minute, this could be me. I could be that person there. Okay, so when you make that commitment, this is something that's why it's important to have that plan in order to be clear and so that you can follow through and not set yourself up for failure. Okay. In addition to that, a 2019 review of 3 randomized control trials also found evidence to suggest that people who quit abruptly, cold turkey, were more likely to quit successfully. However, having said that, we also ultimately just want success. And that could mean if this quitting abruptly doesn't work for you, you must have in mind, and you want to quit gradually, that can also work, but you must have in mind a very clear vision of yourself, of someone who ultimately is going to quit. If you're just going to say, you know, I'm just going to cut down and cut down and cut down, and maybe one day you go, it's not going to happen. Because if you don't have clear goals and guidelines and cutoff points, it's not going to happen. Okay. Now, how can you help? Now, this is a bit controversial, I would say, but these is actually some proven techniques to help you in the transition process. So, nicotine replacement therapy, such as patches and gums and lozenges and sprays and inhalers, can help some people. Now, don't just go to this though. Okay, I guess is what would be good is go and see a doctor and talk to a pharmacist and see what's available. One very important key point is when you have nicotine replacement therapy is you want to find a consistent dose so that you avoid the nicotine rush you get from vaping while still getting relief from the withdrawal symptoms. Stopping something that is a habit that you've been doing and suddenly just stopping completely, you will experience withdrawal. We know that. But having this at least some components still within your system and then you're slowly changing the behaviors, that can help. Okay. Now, experts do recommend starting nicotine replacement therapy the day you quit vaping though. But, and this is the key thing here, nothing in life comes easy, right? So just remember the NRT here doesn't help you address emotional vaping triggers. So there are things in life, your own psychological state, the relationships, the situations that you're in that tend to be the triggers for you to just, then you go to vape as an example. If you don't manage that, even NRT doesn't help. So that's why it's also good concurrently to also consider going to see a therapist or getting support from a quit program. So downloading an app, talking to those in the self-development unit in IMU, getting a support system in place to help you keep going. I think that's very, very key. Don't try to handle everything on your own, particularly when you're in the withdrawal stage. Now, knowing what challenges to expect, this is just being open and honest about what are the challenges involved, right? So knowing what to expect, though, it helps you to set yourself up for success. So as I mentioned before, learn your triggers. Is it people or feelings or situations that can cause you to want to vape? There are certain people in our life or situations which just make us so frustrated or angry or whatever. It elicits certain emotions that we just go to something to manage those emotions and triggers, as an example. But you must know what they are. So therefore, if you know what they are, it may be best to avoid the situations that can trigger you to vape, particularly when you're just about to start. If there's a place you always hang out with your friends and automatically hang out with your friends, you start vaping. Don't go there. Don't hang out there. Okay? But you must be aware of what your triggers are, where your triggers are, who your triggers are. Okay? Prepare for cravings and withdrawal. Think about how you'll fight these cravings and deal with the withdrawal symptoms. Knowing what to expect and having strategies for handling thoughts about vaping uncomfortable feelings will help you succeed. But you need to come up with a list. What are your what are your techniques and your strategies? Again, I'll show you a quick list later, but the idea is what are your go-tos other than vaping that can help you manage the situation? Okay, you should have certain strategies in place as well. Obviously, to resist temptations, avoid the places and the situations where others are vaping. It's going to be tough though, because it's going to be so automatic, so natural for you to go back to those places because you always have been. But this is the time to be very self-aware. That's where the reminders on your phone, on your mirror, on your computer, and everywhere around you, just to remind yourself, wait, I need to change this cycle. I need to break this cycle in order to have a different outcome. Otherwise, I'm just going to continue in this and I'm not going to be successful. Okay. So what can you do when you have those cravings, particularly in the withdrawals, for example? You could learn to practice deep breathing, trying a short meditation, taking a quick walk or stepping outside for a change of scenery, playing a game or solving a crossword or number puzzle, just kind of redirecting your thoughts, being distracted for a moment, okay? But also taking care of physical needs like hunger and thirst by eating balanced meals. Staying hydrated can help manage cravings more successfully when physiologically we are fulfilled, okay? We are not hungry, we're not thirsty. Watch this, when you're hungry and thirsty, it's having to do with the mouth. When you're not hungry, when you're not thirsty, then there is less likelihood that you want to, again, put something in your mouth, such as vaping or smoking. Okay, so I'm not saying being full, but again, being satiated, okay, so that you can manage your cravings more successfully. Now, one very important, that's on the physiological side, one very important thing that you need to tap on also is your psychological side of things. Imagine your life without vaping. Having a clear image of who you are without vaping. redefining yourself in regards to who you are and the person you want to be without vaping. You have to have this thought in your mind so you can envision the end result of this journey and ultimately where you're going to hit. If you don't have a destination, but you have a lot of motivation, you're going to spin around and round and round without getting anywhere. You're going to be working very, very hard with no clear end in sight because there's no direction. Okay? So what's very, very important here is to get used to this vape-free version of yourself. Make this mental shift. Start thinking of yourself as someone who doesn't vape. This will help separate you from vaping and give you the confidence to quit and to stay quit. Think of yourself not just you as someone who vapes, but just you. And who are you? What would people talk about you? What would people say about? How would people describe you without vaping as part of the conversation? Okay. Focus on the positive. Make a list of all the positive things about yourself that don't involve vaping and put it somewhere you can see them often. Okay. It will remind you that vaping does not define who you are. Many times in our life, and I'm not just talking about vaping, we do one thing and people think that's who we are, or we think that's all we're good for. We are defined not just by the behaviors that we obviously practice, but who we think we are and the actions that we take to make those things happen. So one or two things shouldn't just define us. We are multifaceted, holistic people, and there are many different aspects of us. So having this potential ideal that you're not just someone who vapes, but someone who's vape-free, shifting the thought process to something else can help you see the end result as well by also picturing the future you. Compare that with who you are now. Who you are now, who you want to be. What is that gap? And is you want to make that future self very, very desirable. Okay? Because you have to ask the question, how does vaping get in the way of what you want for the future? There are many jobs out there which are ban essentially smoking or and vaping. And if you can't, how should I put it? You can't get away from vaping, that means you can't do those jobs because they're not going to even allow someone like you to do those jobs. So you have to give up a lot in order to keep vaping. So can you just focus on the end result of what you want to be, who you want to become? Someone who's vape-free, and have that in your mind. Because this will help motivate you to stick to your decision to quit when times are tough, because you're redefining who you are, and ultimately who you want to become. Okay? Now, having said that, don't do this alone. Surround yourself with supportive people. Now, who are the supportive people? Find them. It could be friends, family, co-workers, and others, to be there to listen, to boost your mood and distract you. But you need to have people who really understand what your intention is as well, and that you trust. And you trust that they will have the best thought for you and the best support for you. Okay? Also learn to ask for help. If you feel comfortable, tell your friends and family you're quitting vaping and that you will need their support. And sharing your decision, this is one of the key things to help you along, helps open the door for a conversation about your boundaries. We don't really have this conversation in Asian context. What's important in terms of stating your boundaries is what you're comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with, and you need to say it out loud. For example, when you're with your friends who are vaping, ask them not to vape around you. You're not asking them to stop vaping, it's their decision, but not to vape around you. You make it clear to them you are trying your best to stop vaping. You are on a behavior change program. You are on a task to change your life. You're not asking them to do it, but at least don't vape around you. Set those boundaries, make it clear. You can still be friends, but let's not be friends vaping. Okay? Also let friends know you'll avoid places where people are vaping. So where your normal hangouts are, let's kind of shift to something and somewhere else instead. I can still be friends with you, not in those places. Because if I go there, I'm going to start vaping. Because I see you vaping, I see everybody else vaping, I'm going to vape too. I need to go somewhere else instead. Let's hang out somewhere else. Can you be supportive of me for that? Okay. Now, keep in mind that your decision to quit vaping is yours alone. Now, you can show respect for your friends' choices by focusing solely on your experience. Don't have to give them this long explanation or lecture about why they should quit too. No, it's all about you. You can say, I don't want to become dependent on nicotine. I want to make a change for myself. I worry about this nasty cough that I have. I want to take better care of myself. So you're not saying you should do it too. Leave them alone. Let them make their own choices because keep in mind, they may be not even aware of the change that they would like to do, or maybe they'll never change. Maybe they're in the pre-contemplation stage. So don't bother them about that. But you are already in the action stage. And once you are in action stage, you want to maintain that. And that's where you need the support from those around you. Okay. So some people will probably obviously be less supportive than others. It's true. If this happens, you might try restating your boundaries once more and then taking some time away from the relationship. Because some people is like, come on, don't do this. We always hang out together. This is what we normally do. Don't be like this. And it's like, okay, then you restate it again. Look, I'm trying to make a change for myself. I really value our friendship, but not in this way. Okay, so I appreciate if you could support me on this. And they say, no, no, no. When we do this together, we hang out together, we have to do this. Then you say, okay, if that's the case, then maybe I need to change the friendship then. I need to get away from at least for a little while. Okay, because you don't seem to be supportive of this. Look, I still like you as a friend, but I can't do this with you because you're not helping me and I can't do this. Okay, so you just state your boundaries. It's something to be clear and to be made known that you have your boundaries and you can be assertive about that, but with respect for the people around you. Okay. Now, in terms of setting your boundaries, again, it's not going to be easy, particularly for some people, right? So dealing with people who don't get it can be frustrating and discouraging. So what you could do is distance yourself. You may have to remove yourself from those people, from those situations. You need to take a break from unsupportive people when you first try to quit. Let them know that quitting vaping is your priority, that you're still their friend. However, this is something that you need support from them. Otherwise, you can't hang out with them in a regular way. That's it. Also, recommit to quitting. Remind yourself why you're quitting, why being vape-free is so important to you, because its tendency is like, these are my friends, these are the things we do, these are the things that where we hang out, and now I have to change everything. It's tough. That's where, again, having this mental imagery of who you want to be vape-free, but also why you're doing it, having those lists to remind you again and again will keep you on track. Ask them to respect your decision. Not everyone will know how to be supportive, and that's fine. But also ask them not to vape around you or offer you their vape. Don't. Because that's not a true friend though. Okay? Learn to lean on positive people. Spend time with people who make you feel good about your decision and who actually want you to quit. Now, let's talk about the reality as well. Slipping up. It happens. It doesn't matter how strong-willed, doesn't matter how focused and how disciplined, it doesn't matter what you want to change. We can mess up, and we do mess up. So know that you probably have some slip-ups, and that's okay. It's not the best decision, but don't be so hard on yourself, okay? Slip-ups are actually quite common, especially if you're not using like nicotine replacement therapy or don't have a strong support system, or all your friends, all they do is just vape all around you. It's going to be really, really hard to keep that going. Now, if you end up vaping again, try not to give yourself a hard time. Instead, remind yourself how far you've come. Whether, again, is how many days since you actually stopped vaping and maybe you slipped up. But hey, otherwise you wouldn't have, made those changes where you were vape free, as an example. So that's a success. But let's try to beat that now. If you went 10 days vape free, can you try to go 11 days at least? Let's give it a try. So kind of challenge yourself along the way, but also know that, hey, you're human and you're trying. And if it doesn't work, you have to re-strategize. So that's very important. But what you need to do straight away is don't give up and start vaping like crazy, but get back on the horse, meaning that continue to go back onto your plan, committing to quitting again so that you can keep your motivation strong. Because if you just give in and start vaping again like crazy, then you're going to feel so bad and so guilty. And that's even worse than before. And you just want to give up totally. What's very important as well is to revisit your coping strategies. Because if certain things don't seem to help much, stop them. Try something else. There's so many types of coping strategies out there. One very important thing is also to shake up your routine. We are all creatures of habit. And once we keep doing something over and over again, we do things without even thinking about it. So if we want to change and incorporate new habits, we have to try actively to change those habits and replace it with something else. So varying your usual routine can help you avoid situations that make you feel like vaping. This. Okay, so there's this page, and I'll put this in the chat box. All the things I've been talking about to help you with your plan, as an example. This can be a very helpful tool. Okay, this page is basically completing 6 steps to get you to your personalized quit plan. And in these steps, by starting now, for example, is again, is an overview of the key points I talked about. And this thing here is that you actually have to think about it. You're moving from pre-contemplation to contemplation to actually planning. So for example, when is your quit date? Pick a date. Tomorrow, not ready. You actually click on it. You actually make a decision. Then, for example, what is vaping costing you? You have to be honest with yourself. For example, since I started vaping, I noticed that it's affecting my health, I spend too much money, whatever it may be, right? Then you answer and you click as many of this as possible, right? That's relevant to you. How much money do you spend on vaping? Then you actually add that in as well. Then, why are you quitting? Knowing the reasons can help you stay motivated. So you can click, I want to feel better about myself. I want to improve my health. My parents want me to quit. I want to save money. I want to do better in school. Whatever it may be. Just click on that. Then what makes you want to vape? So know your triggers. What are the social situations? Seeing somebody else vape, smelling aerosol from whatever it may be. Where, are you suffering from nicotine withdrawal in the morning, for example? What are your emotions? You're stressed and overwhelmed. That's why you vape. What's your everyday situations? Seeing ads or for vapes throughout the day, going in the school bathroom, people are smoking, I also want to smoke, let's say. Just click on it. Okay? Then, how to fight your cravings. So this makes you help you to think of a plan as well. When a craving hits, what will you do? Distract yourself. Have a mint, chew some gum, play a game or video game on my phone. These are strategies that help you think about things. Then ultimately, setting yourself up for success, actually choose strategies to help you quit. So for support, I will tell a friend I'm quitting, talk to my parents or guardians, ask help from a doctor, nurse, and all that. Okay. And then before you quit vaping, what will you do? You will decide to throw away your vapes, e-liquid bottles, the pods or chargers. Distract yourself, so you could note all these things down. And then once you click all that, you click on let's go, boom, you have your personalized quit plan. And this is what you can go ahead and print out and have it with you in a soft copy form, in hard copy form, put it around so that you can actually see when you're feeling that you need to vape, when you feel that you need to do, go to this behaviors, these are the things that you could do to help yourself on the way. So let me just put this here. I find this very, very helpful as a guide, besides the apps that you could actually download as well. So these are things and strategies that you could actually do along the way. All right. Okay, so that's what I have. And okay, so thank you guys for your time. That's what I wanted to share. And I hope that's been helpful for you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alex, for such a meaningful and amazing talk. I bet all of us have gained some insight on ways how to cope with smoking.